Greetings, my name is Ian Hubrick and welcome to my Understanding by Design project. First things first, what I have chosen as my title is Terrorism in the Middle East. It's a social studies unit for 7th grade students, and it's for my class Instructional Technology 6240 Instructional Design under the direction of Dr. Ping Gao. The reasons why I chose this topic. Well, first and foremost, the topic is highly relevant in today's society. I won't necessarily say that terrorism is everywhere, but it certainly permeates the news, and thus it can make an appearance in many social studies classes. Secondarily, it can easily be transferred to project-based learning, which is a system of learning that I probably enjoy using the most. In that sense, it's something fairly new, yet it's got really good foundations building up these days. So there's a lot out there. Plus, project-based learning definitely assists students in doing a lot of the work and makes the teacher the facilitator in the process, therefore enhancing student learning by making them, to a degree, content creators. Third and finally, in the reasons for this, I am currently actually a social studies teacher. I'm trying to look at things from the instructional technology and tech integrationist perspective, but through and through where I'm coming from on this is not only a social studies background, a history background, but I have a strong emphasis on the Middle East based on my military experience. So for those three main reasons, it's essentially why I selected this topic, due to personal interest and personal knowledge. Alright, we actually have to go to the table to look at this, but there are three stages within Understanding by Design, and stage 3 is sort of the run phase of the crawl, walk, run phase, so it's very important to take an actual gander at that. So if we go here, we look at this, it's got the three stages across the board and three types of goals, and these three types of goals are transfer goals, meaning-making goals, and knowledge goals. Transfer goals are things that students will take with them beyond the classroom or maybe later into the classroom. Meaning-making goals are those types of goals that actually design something in the mind for those students and they make those connections, those aha moments. And finally, knowledge or knowledge and acquisition, skill and acquisition goals, if you will. These are the tools that students will use to build what they need. It's kind of backwards in that sense. The knowledge and skill goals are your most basic ones. Meaning-making goals make the connection for the student themselves, and then transfer goals are things students will carry with them, so that's applying essentially the other two. One of my transfer goals for stage 1 is applying gained knowledge to interpret global events and see that they have an impact on their daily lives, that being those are the students. The stage 2 process of that, the learner's ability, is to research those global events such as acts of terrorism and analyze those impacts on a place close to them like America. This is where I had my performance tasks that had their designed rubrics and guidance with those, so that was all very good. Finally, stage 3, the learning events need to, and for me this sense was, they need to be within the parameters of project-based learning. So students determine basically what they're going to do based on the objectives they had, what they want to research based on their driving questions. They'll be doing a presentation of sorts, a project, usually to the community, or at least in this sense their peers. They get to analyze information that they've collected, they get to do live research. I have them creating a wiki across things, and it ends up in some sort of reflective process. A meaning-making goal for my students, therefore, would be that students have to understand it's important to analyze terrorism, prevent future attacks, in order to gain a better barometer on the world for them, so they understand the news better, so they can be reflective about that. A great way to do this is self-reflection or group reflection, as well as creating a class wiki that they can reference consistently, therefore they can use that to make an important mark for themselves. They see that it's work they've done. Also, class discussions work at the stage 3 level with reflections, as well as collaborative learning, which definitely happens through things like creating a wiki where you can always reference it. Finally, in the most basic of things, students learn to conduct research from primary and secondary sources. A very key social studies sort of thing. Ways that this represents and manifests in stage 2, looking at quizzes, formative assessment, observation formative assessment, and doing knowledge and skill building practices, so research exercises, if you will. At stage 3, what this looks like is it's usually the teacher giving direct instruction. This is how I want you to conduct your research. It's important in that sense for students to gain that level of understanding. Okay. Lessons learned for me in this have a lot to do with looking at the visibility of the alignment. It's not always able to be seen, kind of the alignment between stage 1 and stage 3, between your transfer goals and your skills and knowledge. Over time, that visibility really comes out, but in the beginning you kind of feel like everything's muddy and not so clear. Secondarily, it's very important to have patience with your stages. Stage 1 felt easy. It felt like, oh, okay, this is my background, building info, all that sort of thing. Stage 2 was clear as mud to me. And in that process, I got really discouraged there because it wasn't becoming as clear as I wanted it to, as quickly as I wanted it to. Which brings me to the third point. These stages are all a very, very messy process. Now, because of that, you have to have that expectation that everything's not going to look pretty from the get-go and that things aren't going to get sorted until near the end. If I were to start this project over, some of the things I'd do the same. I'd pick the same topic for sure, just because of my comfort zone with the area. That'll obviously expand over time as I become more comfortable with a tech integrationist role versus a social studies teacher role, but just the same. The performance measures I keep the same. The Iowa core it feels really good to base and ground my research in, to base and ground my lesson plans in. That's pretty much the same for a lot of teachers in the state, and a lot of school districts adhere to that very directly. Also, the assessments were really comfortable to me, and they fit within the schema of project-based learning pretty well. I wouldn't change those out. They're pretty much all formative assessment. In fact, they are all formative assessments with the exception of the beginning diagnostic. However, these formative assessments, nothing's punitive about them, and it very much mixes with project-based learning. Things I would do differently. I rushed my transfer goals in the beginning. For me, it was just one of those things where I didn't know what I was doing necessarily, and when we went back and revised them, I made cleaner transfer goals, but they weren't as good as they could have been. Also, the timing I could have done a little bit differently. Some things went really quickly and I should have spent more time with them, and some things went too slowly because I overthought them. In the future, if I were to start over and I had some knowledge of how this worked, I would make sure everything was getting about the same amount of time. Also, in terms of references, the authors of the book that dictate this have a lot of different tables and stuff you could use. I think I limited myself on my tables. I would have maybe experimented with some of the other ones so I had a better experience overall. For the future, I definitely think this is a lesson for a high school setting. Being lesson specific. It can work in 7th grade if you use a teacher like me, but being as I'm supposed to be in a tech integrationist role, it wouldn't necessarily come down to that. I would need to spend for sure more time with this because the average time for this to really be fully functional on these is 3 to 5 years. So, looking at that plan out there to get it really refined, I'd be happy to spend more time with this. Also, teacher considerations are a big thing. You have to know who your audience is. So I wouldn't necessarily stick myself to just the role of social studies. General plans for the future with this is I will definitely be happy to use more backwards design. I think I had a positive feeling about this in the end. It may not have been a positive road to get there, but in the end, for certain, it definitely made a lot of sense, and backward design is something we push in education quite a lot. Also in the future, I like the way that the alignment was done, especially with unpacking the standards. I think I will definitely keep something of that sense. Finally, I still use summative assessments these days, but this has definitely opened my eyes to moving away from summative assessments almost entirely. Maybe they have places here and there, but definitely formative assessments are where I need to be. Well, that's it. That's everything. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed watching this and this was helpful to you. Once again, I'm Ian Hubrig. If you ever have any questions, look me up through University of Northern Iowa at this time. Thank you very much and take care.